A while ago, at an author interview, I was asked the question, how do you stop thinking? And I responded by saying that I don't. As in, it was never helpful for me to have a focus on trying to stop thinking that didn't help me to go into the space of not thinking. So having a focus on, I'm going to stop thinking now, created tension within me, and the thoughts just kept on cascading. It was like trying to dam a flowing river with, a tiny little rock, and it just didn't work. So at the time, what I found most helpful was to redirect my attention away from the mind and away from the thoughts. So rather than having a focus on, I'm going to stop thinking now, which I didn't find very helpful, I had a focus on redirecting my attention to something that was in the present moment. And that is why all those years of meditation practice and all those years of yoga practice really came in handy for me. Because they taught me to redirect my attention to something that was in the moment. And when you do that, the thoughts subside. Your attention is no longer caught in thinking. The thinking might still happen, but it doesn't drag you along with it. It doesn't then cause all of these upwellings of emotions that are perhaps unhelpful. It doesn't cause you to then act out of emotions that are not serving you well. So we can have a tendency to get caught up in the thinking mind, especially when life is particularly challenging. And when you notice that's happening to you, when you bring some awareness to that process, that process that something happens that you don't like, and the mind throws out all kinds of explanations or justifications for what's happening. It tries to resist what's happening, it complains about what's happening, it creates stories about what's happening. And if you get caught in that process, it causes these upwellings of emotions. You might react, you might say something you don't want to say, you might do something you didn't want to do that you later regret. And that can be problematic. For some of you, it might be helpful to consider stopping thinking. That might work for some of you. That wasn't my experience. My experience was that I needed to redirect my attention to something that's in the moment. And it would cause the mind to ultimately settle. But initially it just gives you that beautiful, that calms your nervous system down when you bring your attention out of the mind and into the body, into the spaciousness within the body, or the energy field that you can sense within the body. If you bring your awareness to your breath and notice that, sometimes just having a nice, deep, conscious breath can just sort of bring you out of the mind and into now. And there are a lot of ways you can do that. You can, if you have the opportunity to spend time outdoors, that's an amazing way to get your feet on the earth, or to go for a run and get your body moving, to challenge the physical body and get those endorphins flowing. All of that can help you to sort of settle and calm that response to the mind and just be here in your body. I found meditation to be a really helpful tool. It doesn't have to be a formal process, meditation can be just going for a walk. You might just go for a walk in nature, and if you are there and observing all the beautiful things around you, hearing all the sounds, smelling all the smells, especially when the weather warms up, or even in the cool weather, there's sometimes moisture in the air that you can smell. You might be able to smell the rain on the earth, or in the summertime or the springtime, you can smell flowers, and these things can really bring you back. The saying comes to mind, come to your senses. Come to your senses. And just going for a walk could be a meditation. Drawing could be a meditation. Singing could be a meditation. Listening to music could be a meditation. Anything that brings you to here and now and helps to calm down those nervous responses, bringing you out of the mind and back into this moment, even just for a little bit. And with meditation practice, one of the most helpful things, I found yoga to be really helpful because you push your body just a little bit, hopefully not too much. That's not ideal, you don't want to injure yourself, but if you push your body to a little bit where it's slightly uncomfortable, just slightly, and you place some attention and focus on your breathing while you're doing that, and just observe and allow that slight discomfort to be there. That is an example of how you would apply that then to challenges in life. It really helps to teach you when you are uncomfortable how to just create a bit of space. When you're uncomfortable, can you create a little bit of space around that discomfort? And can you recognize the stillness that's underneath that discomfort? Can you become aware of that space? So one of my favorite meditation practices was always to observe the breath, and the challenge is to observe the breath. There are breath exercises that you can do, and they're amazing. That has never been my area of expertise. I have practiced some pranayama, and I have been a student of some breath work, and it's amazing what that can do. But one of my favorite things was just to be there with the breath and allow the breath to be its natural, normal rhythm without changing it. To observe the natural rhythm of the breath without changing it. As in, can you allow it to be Can you let that process happen? You don't need to think about breathing. It happens. So can you let that happen? And when you practice that, it's the ultimate in allowing, and it also helps you to become still and calm. Because the breath is something that happens here in this moment. If you bring your attention to the breath, you take your focus away from the mind, and you bring your focus to this moment. And when you do that, your body will become calmer, more relaxed, if you can allow the breath to take place without changing it, just observing. And that skill can then carry over into your daily life. So challenges happen, life is chaotic at times, people are challenging, unwanted circumstances might show up. And that breath awareness meditation can carry into those experiences. So yes, you might have to deal with them, but can you deal with them by first, even just initially, even just for a moment, just take a breath, a conscious breath, and accept that this situation has shown up. Yes, it's shown up. It's something to be dealt with. It isn't ideal, but it is what is at this point in time. And so can you first allow that situation to be there without going into the mind and listening to everything that it wants to tell you about that situation? This shouldn't be happening. I can't believe this is happening. Of course this happens. Of course it starts raining as soon as I hang the clothes on the line. There's, this person's so annoying. Oh, I can't believe he did that. Why won't they return my call? Why does this have to be so hard? This is the mind. I could go on forever about what the mind will try and tell you. The observation of the breath without changing it might help you to sort of just say, okay, can you just notice the thoughts that are coming up without trying to change them? When you do that, you start to create space between yourself and those thoughts, rather than them grabbing all of your attention and drawing you in completely, and then you start acting out of that. I can't believe they didn't respond to me. I'm sending them another email, and whatever it is. Rather than doing that, you create a little bit of space. Just notice the thought. Don't try and change it in any way. Just, okay. You can try and change your thoughts. And it is helpful up to a point as well. You can change your thinking. You can reprogram thoughts that aren't serving you, and you can actually create new ones that are serving you. But ultimately, when you bring awareness to the patterns that aren't serving you, they do have a way of resolving, and it can take time. So this practice is about bringing awareness to not only the patterns and the things that are coming up for you, the thoughts that are not serving you, but also bringing awareness to the stillness. Because in that space, you remain relatively unaffected by life's challenges, and it can get a bit much, being at the mercy of what life has to dish up for you. So you're probably wanting to begin to step out of that, because it can be unbearable at times to be caught up in not just the thoughts that come in response to what happens in life, but also those emotions that seem automatic, that well up and can be quite uncomfortable. So ideally, you would start to practice this when things are going well, and that can give you a space to retreat to if things become a bit chaotic, or if the challenges get a bit much. This can give you a space to retreat to. Developing awareness of the thoughts that are coming up for you can be quite confronting when you first start noticing, and when you become sensitive to how you are feeling. When you first start noticing the thoughts that are showing up, that can be really confronting. So be aware of the tendency to want to be hard on yourself at that point. I mean, we want to be good people. We don't want to have thoughts that are not kind towards others or towards ourselves. We don't want to have these thoughts that aren't serving us. And if you notice some things that are very confronting for you, consider that to be a success. It might be unpleasant or uncomfortable, but when you do bring awareness to any thoughts that are happening, any feelings that are not serving you well or are getting in the way of you accessing the stillness beneath that. Firstly, that is what's showing up for you. That is a part of that present moment reality. So if you can accept that that's what is there right now, then that's a huge win. And it's a really big step. It might not feel like it, and it might feel uncomfortable. You might become impatient and want that emotion or that thought to subside. But they've shown up for a reason, and it could be something from the past. We don't necessarily have to examine that. An insight might occur to you about where that originated, but if something's showing up for you now, then that's great, because you've got access to that right now. And if you can just observe it and allow it to be there without trying to change it, you're actually creating space between yourself, between the emotion, between the thought. It no longer has the power to take you over. And it begins to dissolve. It's reality. The reality of that starts to dissolve, because the mind wants to look for evidence. When you feel not great. The mind wants to look for evidence, and it wants to distract you. It doesn't want you to see the emotion. It doesn't want you to see that pain, because as soon as you do, it begins to dissolve. And that's what we're actually doing a lot of the time, is we're avoiding looking at those painful emotions. That's why we get caught up in the mind. That's why the mind, some of you might even have pleasant thoughts that come up that are attempting to distract you, depending on where you're at. You might actually have these beautiful little daydreams that come up, all the while distracting you from, hey, there's a little bit of discomfort here, and I don't want to be seen, because if I get seen, I'm going to start to disappear, and it will dissolve. Anytime you bring your focus to this moment, that the mind, the past emotions that you actually carry with you now, you carry them in your energy field now. So anytime you bring your attention to this moment, you might encounter some of that. And anytime you bring yourself back into this moment, those past things, they begin to dissolve, because they exist in time. So it's like you carry around with you this conceptual self. And it's a linear self. It exists in time. There's memories and ideas and concepts about who you think you are and who you've become, who you are becoming, where you are going. So it's a concept that we carry around with us. So time is a concept we carry around with us. And many of you already understand that, it's been taught over and over again for thousands of years that ultimately there is one time, and it is now. So you know that it's now, and it's a strange thing to watch the conceptual self begin to shrink. So if you were to drop all of those memories about who you were, and if you were to forget that you were ever going somewhere in the future, what's left? This beautiful relief from a burdensome, some of you may not have a big burden, but some of you may, and it's this huge relief from all these worries and cares and concerns and this concept of who you think you are. And in this moment, when you're free of the concepts, when you're free of the thoughts, you didn't stop thinking, you just brought your attention to this moment. And the thoughts naturally fell away. And you became free. Of any concepts, and this place now, in this moment, where this world emerges, is the place where you are more fully who you are. beyond any function that you have in this world, beyond your body that you are in this lifetime, because that's temporary. Your function in this world is temporary. And the forms that show up in your life experience are all temporary. And when you know something is temporary, there's a couple of ways you could go. You could go into the mind, the conceptual self, and you could become fearful. Because it's all going to end. Or you can remember, when you remember, to bring yourself to this moment where life, the phenomenon of life, is happening. And when you do that, when you be that, you are able to savor the temporariness and really enjoy these experiences as they show up. And then even challenges are not so troublesome. There are still challenges, but they become a part of your practice. So this is the practice. Bringing yourself into the moment when you remember to do so. And little by little, that becomes easier. And eventually, you'll reach a tipping point where being in the moment is your predominant state.